Hi, so I talk a lot about fuck, dude, I can't fucking talk. Oh my gosh. I talk a lot about a lot of interesting things in this video. I am so dissociated. But this is my first attempt at making like a not as much edited video in a long time. So I don't know. I can't I assume it comes off very disorganized in the beginning, but it gets better. So I just wanted to let you know, like, this video is just like kind of trash, but you might still enjoy it. I don't know. Hello, you creature of the internet. My name is Elle, and I'm the host of the Mage system. So I was browsing on the subreddit r/plural recently, which, if you don't know, there are a few subreddits on Reddit dedicated to systems, and Plural is one of the ones that I've been getting into recently. Fuck, my fucking microphone. And r/plural is one of the ones that I've been getting into more recently because their environment is just a lot more accepting and positive. Whereas subreddits like r/did, a lot of the stuff there just feels like very pessimistic and like that has a very clinical view on it, which I think my take on DID is that, like, yes, it's a very clinical thing, like obviously like it's a mental disorder, but also we're like a community of people, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, people with autism, like it's all autism-y and it's like a disorder and everything, but also it's kind of like a community identity at the same time. Like, it is a group of people and they relate to each other, and like there's in jokes, and I feel like DID is kind of like that, and I feel like r/plural captures that a lot more than other subreddits do. But one thing about r/plural is that they believe in endogenic systems and believe that they are just as valid as traumagenic systems, or systems of multiple identities that are caused by trauma, aka people with DID or OSD or partial DID or what have you. So, people on r/DID, a lot of them are skeptical of these systems or find it offensive that someone would try to create an alter on purpose, or just don't believe that it's a thing. And I think that Plural just doesn't do that. So I was browsing on Plural and I saw this post from an endogenic system, and they were like, yes, we are endogenic and all that, but we identify as having dissociative identity disorder, and we believe it's okay for us to say that because whenever we first created a tulpa, and then later on an alter formed spontaneously after an adult trauma. And so technically we are a traumagenic system, thus we do have DID. And I was reading that and I was thinking, like, this is so interesting because I 1000% believe in tulpamancy. Like, you think, therefore you are. Like, I believe that it's a thing. But I was always very firm on, don't say that you have DID if you're a tulpamancy system, because you didn't go through the trauma, and so it's not like a disorder. Like, you can control it and you chose to do that. Well, not that you can always control it, like, because some people have developed their tulpas so much that they really do just they just do what they want to do. But you see what I'm saying? Like, it's just not the right language to call it a disorder. But this one post that I just talked about, I was very interested in that because, yes, it's very easy to say that, like, that person probably just had formed an alter in childhood and didn't know about it. And so now that they form their first traumagenic alter, they think it's their first and that they developed DID in adulthood, but it's actually not. But this person did comment and they were like, don't try to tell me that I might have formed an alter as a kid, because I didn't. This is the first one. And so I was thinking, like, well, shit, like, if you're being for real right now and, like, you didn't form an alter as a kid, like, that means something, like, big. Like, that means that, A, tulpas are cut from the same cloth as DID alters. Like, they're the same thing. They're just not caused by trauma. Because for you to have formed a tulpa and then that unlocks the ability for you to form alters, like, that probably means that they're the same thing. And then B, it means that DID can technically be formed in adulthood, which goes against like everything science knows about the formation of DID. Because I don't know if you're watching this, I'm sure you're familiar with the theory of structural dissociation and the fact that DID forms before the personality is fully integrated, and that's why it can form, and that, you know, happens at the ages of 7 to 9 or whatever. So to the idea that it can form in adulthood just seems out there, doesn't it? But and then again, I always thought kind of deep in there, like just like my own, I'm not going to tell anybody this, but like I've kind of contemplated before if it's possible to form DID in like teenagerhood. Because when you think about it, like your personality isn't fully formed until like much later in your life, really. Like, you really don't know who you are until you're like 20. I don't know. Like, that's just from my observing people. I've always wondered if maybe it's possible to form it a little bit later. I don't know, especially for certain people. So I just thought it was very interesting. And then that post incited my curiosity more. So I made my own post on Reddit about this. And I'm just going to read it to you because the replies were super interesting. And I thought this would be just like a really interesting discussion to have. So here's my post. I'm going to read it to you. Are tulpas cut from the same cloth as DID alters? I'm asking in genuine curiosity as a DID system who is fascinated by this. Do you think that tulpas are basically the same thing as DID alters, just not caused by trauma? I don't know how else to ask it, so I hope this question makes sense. That is, are they of a dissociative nature? Do different areas of the brain get activated during switches? Can they have different eyesight, sexual preferences, etc.? Not that all alters have to have those things to be an alter, but I'm just giving examples to clarify the question. Basically, are they the same thing? Also, how often do endogenic systems black out between switches? I would think it's more uncommon than in DID because to me, blacking out seems like something the brain would not do unless it really felt like it had a reason to. For example, traumagenic alters. I saw a post on here by an endogenic system saying blah, 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 blah. Like what I just told you, basically. And me just explaining that that challenges science's view on how it forms. And the responses were really... The first one... Okay, y'all have to really tell me what you think about this because this is so fucking interesting. Okay, bear with me, man. I'm hanging on by a thread right now, but my microphone stopped working at this part, so I'm just going to dub over and read the post to you. So the post says, from what I'm aware, or the comment, from what I'm aware, the only difference between any kind of headmate is the circumstances under which the brain started forming a new headmate. From that point onwards, all headmates are functionally cut from the same cloth. Functionality, sorry. The origin story has very little impact on how different headmates function. That is to say, all headmates have the full diversity of personhood and human experience available to them. Different systems and headmates work in vastly different ways, but no particular trait is unique to any particular origin. As we understand it, DID is basically just what CPTSD looks like when it occurs in a body containing more than one person. It can develop at any age. If systems that were already living comfortably as a group of several people go through trauma and develop PTSD or a singlet, in quotation marks, that was just a well-adjusted plural system, not realizing they were separate people because they were cooperating seamlessly, go through trauma that cracks this singlet identity. What? That the cracks in that singlet identity begin to show. Different headmates start experiencing different trauma responses. Friction starts to disrupt their previously smooth coexistence, and the facade of being a singlet breaks down under pressure. In both cases, they were already living a healthy and well-adjusted life as a plural system, just one of them wasn't aware of it beforehand. Whether or not your system formed in response to trauma, through an intentional effort, or just as a natural part of how your brain works, has very little impact on how DID manifests. And if you don't presuppose that people must inevitably start as singlets, or that someone who went through trauma at a young age was ever going to be a singlet in the first place, then it all just looks like PTSD in a body with many people, which is such an interesting way to look at it. The idea that it forms Um, I'm trying so hard to think right now. Particularly their sentence, as we understand it, DID is basically just what CPTSD looks like when it occurs in a body containing more than one person. That line, that's such a weird way to think about it and interesting. Um, and then the rest of the post says a lot of medical theories claim that everyone starts as many separate cells that are all just inevitably, in quotation marks, bound to come together into a singular sense of self and personhood, unless trauma comes along and disrupts the process. I would argue that instead of the process being an inevitable biological function, it is a process of socializing people to see themselves as one person, especially teaching people to grow up from childish things like talking to their imaginary friends. I would argue that some plural systems are created as a result of trauma, but not all. For other systems, the trauma just creates enough friction within the system to break the illusion that they were ever going to become singlets. I don't know if that made any fucking sense. I was trying so hard to talk that whole time. Oh my god. Also, the audio is just gonna suck for a few more seconds, but it'll be good in a second. Oh, also, I read part of a reply to that comment, so I need to read that real quick. I'm so sorry. Hot take, but I think the entire concept of singlets in quotation marks is somewhat a myth. We all have different parts to us, and the differences are largely how we relate to those parts, conceptualize them, and how strong the quotation marks borders are between them. Dissociative aspects and how much space we give them to develop personality and autonomy. Which is just so fascinating. Like the idea that like everybody could be a system if they wanted to be. We're just taught not to be. That's so out there. Like they're it's like their take is that the idea of being a singlet is a social construct almost that you're trained to do, which is just like really something. I don't know what else to say about that. I think like sometimes I'm just like, yeah, that's one way to think about it, but like, why? I just don't think it's the most productive way to think about things, you know? They also said, in short, it's a spectrum, and at no point on even the most singlet side of that spectrum is anyone ever a singular, unified identity. While there's most certainly a difference between how the average person experiences consciousness and how a plural person is, I think that drawing a binary dichotomy around this is harmful, and a part of the reason half of the threads on this sub are people asking about whether they count as a plural or not, because we act like there's this massive leap between two binary experiences. It's just not. Brains are more nuanced than that. The more I learn about it, the more I think plurality is a way to give a voice and relate to the parts that were within us the whole time and let them actually develop a full fledged personality and have a sense of independent self. To me, this is probably the most important defining factor if I had to pick one. Oh my gosh, that's just like. I feel like I'm not even saying anything interesting right now. I think that sometimes this is just sort of a debate of like the words we use and like what they mean, because you could just kind of argue that, well, society's definition of a singular identity includes a very nuanced sense of self that has lots of different perspectives and parts to it. And I think that that's closer to the truth, is that like I think that obviously no one is a completely singular identity where like all of their thoughts and feelings and opinions are always the same. I don't know if I'm making sense right now. Just tell me if you're connecting to what I'm thinking, because I feel like whenever I go to record, all that comes out is just word vomit. So it's so hard to record without an extensive outline, but I'm like making myself. I just feel like this isn't the best way to think about it. I think that a better way to think about it is like maybe being a singlet is a more complex thing than just being one person that never wavers in how they identify. And so maybe, I don't know, like at a certain point, and people who are very, very much pro not self diagnosing and just very, very clinical in their view of mental disorders and do not ever like really acknowledge the community aspect and like the identity aspect of these disorders and how they affect people, they're not going to like this. But I do think a lot of the process of considering yourself to have a disorder is, I think a lot of it is just kind of how you identify and how you feel and what feels most helpful for you to identify as. And as long as you're not being deceitful or just lying or in your doing your research, I think that there's a lot of wiggle room in there. And no, it's not a completely binary dichotomy. And but I do think that like it is a very interesting assumption to kind of suggest that everybody is plural, they just choose to ignore it. It's kind of like the opposite of what some people say, where it's like everybody is a singlet, some people just overthink it. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of like it's pretty radical, man. But then I saw another comment on here that I really liked and I thought was very interesting. So I'm going to read that one to you. Specifically, a response to the last paragraph, which was about the post that I saw. I'm not a psychologist, but I have a theory that the reason DID is formed in childhood is that is the age where it is easiest to accidentally split up the identity, especially when trauma is put into the mixture. And kids tend to compartmentalize their trauma, causing a perfect storm for DID. After childhood, you'll have to put in conscious effort to split up your identity, tulpamancy. But sometimes tulpas get affected by later life trauma too, or since the mind is already compartmentalized, it becomes easy to make more fragments, causing symptoms just like DID. And what looks like a duck and quacks like a duck probably is a duck. I'm generalizing here because, like I said, I'm not a psychologist and I don't have DID nor tulpas. I just have a system for unknown reasons. My brain is trying to comprehend what the fuck that means. I'll circle around to that or not, maybe, I guess. But I wouldn't be surprised if something like this turned out to be the case. This was a comment that I really liked because it makes the most sense here. Because when you think about it, like CPTSD can be acquired by adults, but it's most often caused by childhood trauma, complex childhood trauma. But it can be acquired in adulthood, especially in cases of just very complex trauma, like an abusive relationship that like really seeps into you, you know? But like, I think I've always had the hypothesis that the younger you are, just due to the way your brain works or something, you're more likely to get CPTSD, but you can still get it in adulthood. And as we know, like if you're familiar with structural dissociation, CPTSD is on the way to being DID. And so I think it's interesting the idea that yes, DID maybe it can be acquired in adulthood, but it's just you have to go out of your way to do it in most cases. I don't know. I just think that's really interesting. And also, I probably haven't said this already. Don't take anything I'm saying seriously right now. This is just like for shits and giggles. This is a stream of consciousness. I do not stand by anything that I'm saying. I am thinking out loud and I am exploring ideas without actually believing them. Okay? Does that make sense? So don't like take this and run with it or anything or say that I believe that you can form DID in adulthood because I don't know. I don't know if you can. I just think that it's an interesting question to ask. I don't know because yeah, we have some research on DID, not enough to be honest, but there are so many people on the subreddit that are sharing just their very diverse experiences that are very like probably very foreign sounding to someone who has only ever explored just DID YouTube and like dissociated and entropy system that are just regurgitating the same exact like this is DID, this is what it's caused by, this is what it looks like, just over and over again. And it's like this is just so different from that it's so interesting. It is very interesting. Someone said, I've always suspected so. Tulpa guides with switching / cocon / anything really with tulpamancy. So if you're not familiar, since tulpamancy is something that people do like kind of as a hobby and they go out of their way to do and create these people, there's a lot of like guides online just teaching you like to make the tulpa, and then from there you have to kind of learn how to get it to switch into your body and like different things like that, and they have guides to do that. And this person says that it's been shown to help DID systems with their stuff regarding switching and other things. And then the rest of what they said, and other people say they don't have differences, so I definitely say that they both function under the same underlying brain mechanisms. So yeah, I'm kind of leaning towards that too. But yeah, someone else commented on this and they were like, well, just try creating a tulpa yourself and you'll see. No, thank you. No, thank you. I can't explain why I wouldn't ever want to do that, but I wouldn't. But if I did, I would make one that just wanted to do all the shit that I didn't want to do. Like they just loved working. Like they thought it was so fun. No, but in reality though, I have had an experience because I write fiction sometimes, and I'm writing this fiction thing right now, and sometimes like the characters that I'm writing will start like coming into my head and saying things that I did not solicit them to say. And I have to be like, whoa, whoa, whoa there, buddy. Let's pack it up right now because I'm not forming another altar. Not on my watch. Okay, this person said, all forms of plurality are similar. I don't consider plurality the symptom of DID slash OSDD, etc., to be in a completely different realm than endogenic or endogenic or parogenic. Never heard that word before. Plurality, but I assume it means the same thing from context. They are all plurality. While it's somewhat true that it may not always be possible to achieve traumagenic levels of dissociation just from sheer force of will, these levels vary by person, and there is still an entire spectrum leading up to them. For example, a given endogenic system may have stronger barriers than another given traumagenic system, so for me, there is really no hard line between them. The endogenic system is still a system, and their plurality is still the same type of plurality. Regardless of mono-poly consciousness, possessive slash non-possessive switching, types, or media of communication, nearly all plurality is fundamentally similar. I have not yet seen a single example of plurality that does not fit this model, even in paragenic systems, because the fundamental consequences of the brain separating in parts will always be similar. DID, the disorder, is almost always happens as some sort of survival mechanism, and it can't just be willed into existence. However, I would challenge the belief that you have to split during childhood in order to retain access to splitting later. It's fairly well known that systems that fully fuse can split again later. So really all that needs to happen is for your brain to keep splitting on the books. Sorry, I don't think I read that right. So that's also, oh my fucking god, this fucking microphone. Also very interesting because I was thinking today and I was like, well, why can we split later in life? Like really, like just because we split during childhood doesn't mean like how if you can only acquire DID in childhood, it genuinely kind of doesn't make sense why someone who, even if you already developed DID, that you would be able to split later in life, because how are you supposed to unintegrate an integrated part of you? Even if you've have DID, like that doesn't mean that it doesn't make sense. Okay. Oh god. This shit. It doesn't make sense, and it like I've seen people like just try and say like, well, that's your brain's coping mechanism that it's used to doing. But like that's like saying, say somebody had a trauma, and in this universe, if you have trauma, it makes you not able to get any taller past the age of 6. Okay, so because you had that trauma, you stay like 4'11" or whatever the fuck you were at age 6. I don't know heights like that until you get older, and then you experience a new trauma. Does that mean you can just shrink again? Does that mean you can shrink more? Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't exactly fully make sense, and it does make me think that maybe, though it's very hard, but hence having to go out of your way to do it, maybe it could be possible to form alters in adulthood. It's just you either have to go out of your way to do it or your brain is already experienced in doing it. I don't know. I think it's very interesting and very confusing, and God, this field needs so much more research. Someone else said that yes, they think they're cut from the same cloth, but there's less dissociation. Oh, that's another thing, is I wanted to talk about the blackout thing, because that's one thing I still genuinely don't understand, is how tulpas would be able to black out between switches. If it's not traumagenic, I just don't get how your brain would allow that to happen. You know, because I feel like your brain only loses facilities like memory if it really feels like it has a good reason to. Like if your adrenaline is going through the roof, or it feels like it needs to hide information from you. Because I just feel like blackouts are such a drastic symptom that, like, it just seems like you would have to be a one talented brain power motherfucker to be able to create a tulpa that blacks out in between switches, you know? Or somebody that just, you just have great dissociative skills, which is like crazy to think of, like dissociation being a skill set, but I guess it is in that context. So congratulations, you guys, you're experts. Sorry. Um, but I think that's basically, like, I just wanted to come on here and talk about that. I, I've been very stressed trying to get all of my responsibilities done, and have the energy and time to make videos. I've been getting all my videos out by a landslide because, editing takes forever. And so I was just watching these other content creators that, like, just don't edit their videos very much. And I remembered a time where I used to not edit my videos very much. And I think I stopped doing it because I just thought it was, the videos weren't just, they just weren't going to be as good. But I realized that maybe that's not the case. And then also, maybe uploading something is better than uploading nothing, you know? So let me know if this works. It's kind of difficult for me to do, and I feel like whenever I start a video, like, I really don't know what to say. And then as the video goes on, I get, like, better at talking. But yeah, because all my videos recently have been very, like, structured, and there's been, like, just an extensive outline that I have to follow. And even though I'm following that outline, I'm still stuttering and not knowing how to say what I want to say. And so editing just takes forever. So I'm trying to just figure out how to be able to talk at you in a efficient and entertaining way, and be able to maintain my thoughts. Because I feel like whenever I start filming, I just like disappear from my body, and my mouth just starts talking. I, like, have to, I don't know why I feel like I have to detach from reality to film a video, but it's a phenomenon. So I would like it if that would subside. Thank you for watching. Check and see if you're subscribed to my amazing YouTube channel. And if you're not, just go ahead and do that right quick. Thank you. And then I guess I'll go now.